1954. Berlin was the most dangerous city on Earth. The Soviet army was ready for World War III.
American spies were completely blind. The Soviets changed their radio codes. Washington could not hear a single thing.
The Iron Curtain blocked all spies on the surface. But the CIA found a crazy alternative route.
Deep underground, a massive Soviet communication cable carried every top-secret military order from Moscow to Berlin. The CIA hatched an insane plan. They would dig a secret tunnel straight into the deadly Soviet sector. To hide the dirt, they built a fake radar station. In the basement, elite army engineers started digging. Operation Gold was born. They had to dig a massive tunnel directly under the feet of the enemy. It was brutal work. Men carved through freezing mud and solid clay in complete and total silence. If the wooden tunnel collapsed, they would be buried alive. If they made noise, the Soviets would execute them. Finally, they struck the target cable. But heavy Soviet boots were marching right above their heads. The engineers froze in terror. Dirt rained down as heavy Soviet patrols marched inches above their heads. When it was clear, they spliced the cable. One wrong cut would instantly trigger a Soviet alarm. The connection was flawless. They successfully tapped into the main communications nerve of the Soviet military. The CIA built a massive listening post. Hundreds of tape recorders began spinning 24 hours a day. Suddenly, America could hear everything. Linguists translated thousands of top-secret Soviet military conversations in real time.
They discovered troop movements, nuclear strategies, and the names of undercover agents. It was an intelligence goldmine.
Tons of recorded tapes were secretly flown back to Washington every single week for deep analysis. The American government was thrilled. Operation Gold quickly became their greatest victory of the early Cold War. But winter soon arrived. The massive electronic equipment in the tunnel generated extreme amounts of heat underground. The heat began melting the snow above. It created a perfect, visible line pointing straight to their base. Soviet guards marched closer. If they saw the melted snow line, the entire operation would be exposed immediately. The CIA panicked. Engineers frantically built a massive underground cooling system to freeze the earth above them. The cooling system worked. The ground froze solid again, completely hiding the secret tunnel from the enemy above.
The Soviet patrols walked right over the frozen ground. The American spies breathed a heavy sigh of relief.
But the real threat was not the snow. It was a deadly traitor hiding inside British intelligence.
Double agent George Blake handed the complete tunnel blueprints directly to the ruthless Soviet KGB. Moscow knew everything. Before the first shovel even hit the dirt, the Soviets already had the American plan.
The KGB did not destroy the tunnel. Instead, they used it to feed America fake military intelligence.
American spies recorded thousands of useless tapes. They completely believed they were winning this dangerous silent war.
But soon, the Soviets had to stage a violent discovery. Subscribe to War Cinema 4K for the brutal end. Soviet assault troops flooded the narrow dirt tunnel. They were ordered to capture the American spies alive. Alarms blared. American agents frantically smashed their top-secret recording machines with heavy iron hammers. Outgunned and outmaneuvered, the CIA operatives retreated. They fled back across the border into the American sector.
They slammed a massive steel vault door shut. The thick iron bolts locked just in time.
Soviet troops hammered against the steel barricade. But the Americans had successfully escaped into the safe zone.
The Soviets claimed a massive victory. They proudly cut the wire and disconnected the American listening post.
Moscow weaponized the discovery. They invited the global press to humiliate the United States on international television. International journalists flooded the tunnel. They took thousands of flashing photos of the complex American spy machinery. Moscow wanted to humiliate Washington. They wanted the world to see the Americans as desperate, dirty thieves.
But the Soviet propaganda plan completely backfired. The world's reaction was not what Moscow was expecting.
Instead of anger, the world was completely amazed. The American engineering marvel made the CIA look incredibly powerful.
The propaganda failed. The Soviet leader realized his attempt to humiliate Washington had accidentally glorified American intelligence.
Despite the traitor, the tunnel was a massive success. The CIA collected over 50,000 reels of enemy audio.
The KGB could not fake everything. The sheer volume of daily military chatter revealed the true Soviet strength.
Analysts discovered real train schedules and troop sizes. America finally knew exactly how the Soviet war machine operated.
But the CIA still needed to find the rat. Spy hunters started tracking the deadly leak back to Europe. The investigation crossed the ocean. The evidence pointed directly to the heart of British intelligence in London.
The notorious double agent knew they were coming. The man who betrayed Operation Gold desperately prepared to run.
British agents kicked out his door. The notorious traitor was finally captured and sentenced to a maximum security prison.
The mole was caught, but a terrifying new message arrived. The Soviets were moving millions of concrete blocks.
August 1961. Under the cover of darkness, Soviet forces began building a massive physical barrier across Berlin.
Citizens woke up to a nightmare. Miles of deadly barbed wire violently tore the city in half. The Berlin Wall was born. It trapped millions of people inside a brutal communist prison.
Armed guards with vicious attack dogs patrolled the new death strip. Anyone trying to cross was shot. The United States could not simply watch. American heavy armor rolled aggressively to the official border crossing.
Tensions exploded at Checkpoint Charlie. Heavily armed Soviet tanks moved forward to block the American forces completely.
Dozens of massive tank barrels pointed directly at each other across a narrow, quiet city street. Young soldiers nervously gripped their weapons. One single mistake would instantly ignite the Third World War.
The massive engines idled in the freezing air. Then, an unexpected radio command shattered the silence.
Instead of firing, the Soviet tanks slowly shifted into reverse. The tense back-channel diplomacy had actually worked. American soldiers lowered their weapons. One by one, the massive tanks pulled back. World War III was averted. Both superpowers agreed to a mutual withdrawal. The immediate crisis ended, but the brutal wall remained permanently. The temporary wire was replaced by solid concrete. Berlin was completely and permanently divided into two different worlds. The intelligence war went deeper into the shadows. Captured spies were secretly traded on isolated, foggy bridges. In 1962, the Glienicke Bridge became famous. The CIA and KGB met here to exchange their captured agents.
It was a tense trade. One captured American pilot exchanged for a master Soviet intelligence officer. The two men walked past each other in silence. The brutal underground game of espionage claimed many lives.
The American pilot was finally safe. Operation Gold was dead, but the CIA had learned a valuable lesson.
But the pilot brought back a terrifying message. The Soviets were secretly placing nuclear missiles in Cuba.
The Cuban Missile Crisis began. Washington panicked. The Soviets placed nuclear weapons just 90 miles from Florida.
But the CIA remembered the Berlin Tunnel. They rushed to analyze the old intercepted Soviet military tapes.
The tapes revealed a shocking truth. The Soviet military was actually incredibly weak and disorganized. They were bluffing.
Armed with this secret knowledge, America refused to back down. The president ordered a total naval blockade.
American warships formed a massive steel wall in the ocean. They knew the enemy did not want war. The intelligence was absolutely perfect. The Soviet ships slowly turned around. The world was completely saved.
The deadliest crisis in human history was averted. The enemy withdrew their nuclear weapons in total defeat. The brave engineers never received public medals. Their incredible sacrifice remained highly classified for decades.
In 1999, modern workers accidentally unearthed the forgotten spy tunnel. The rusted metal finally saw the daylight again.
The secret machines were recovered and placed in museums. The world finally learned about the crazy underground heist.
Operation Gold was a masterclass in espionage. It proved that information was the deadliest weapon of the Cold War.
The brave engineers who dug the tunnel never wore capes. They fought a terrifying war deep underground in silence.
Their massive sacrifice remained locked in classified files for 50 years. They saved millions of lives from the shadows. They received no public parades. The invisible soldiers of Operation Gold simply did their duty and faded away.
History is shaped by the brave few who dare to dig deeper. The ultimate victory belongs to the unseen. The Cold War was full of insane secrets. Subscribe to War Cinema 4K now.